I love your socks.
Thank you. I'm representing Maui today.
Cute. We
No.
love those cute, fun socks.
Yeah, I really like this brand. And they always have like the unique
Yeah.
or exclusive ones for Maui when we're there, which maybe they're not exclusive, but it's a great marketing ploy for me. Just say exclusive for like locations, specifically like coffee mugs,
Yeah.
magnets, t-shirts,
We're buying
socks,
it.
hats. It's definitely gonna be tempting to me.
Yes, we love socks.
We do love socks. I don't want to wear, I feel like we wear like 1% of the socks we have. So maybe this will be a good excuse for me to wear all the different socks.
Yeah, we have a big collection of socks.
Yeah.
Welcome back to another episode of relationspod.
Starring Gabriel D. Lavalley
And Tyler.
H. We're working on it. Welcome back to another episode. Today we are going to be talking about something that all men experience at some point in their lives, and that is
Puberty.
hormonal influx, hormonal surge, changes, and I think being gay, it hits us a little differently.
Yes, there's a lot of questions. There's a
Yes.
lot of things that we don't understand at first. And the problem is there's no one to talk to. At least for me, I didn't have a close relationship with my dad at that time. So it was very hard for me to talk to him about things that were going on with my body.
Yeah, I get that. So my dad and my mom got divorced when I was 2, which is relatively early. So I didn't have much of a dominant male figure in my life till I was like 7 or 8. My mom got remarried. And, stepdad, cool guy. They had their thing. I wasn't super close to him and definitely was not going to ask him about anything related to sexuality
Yes.
or puberty or
Yes.
development. At that time, too, it's funny. Me and my mom had gotten really close when she got divorced from my dad. And I think, uh, she moved on to a new relationship. And then my stepdad became like her second child. And so she was always taking care of him. So I didn't feel comfortable at that point either going to her. It was kind of like this shift in our relationship as I was going through puberty. She was getting more focused on her relationship and her marriage and things like that, and my stepdad was a handful. So I didn't have anyone to talk to either. My dad was still alive, he's still with us, but we weren't close, and we still aren't super close. But definitely was not going to call him up and say, hey, what's this hair growing next to my penis?
But I think that's every teenager. We don't want to share that with our parents. Maybe we share that with our friends, but not our parents. We feel ashamed for a
Yeah.
lot of reasons. We don't want to talk about sexuality. We don't want to talk about
Right.
jerking off. We don't want to talk about any of those things with our parents. I
Yeah.
think it's common
Right.
that we have this approach.
Yeah, and I think going to friends when you're gay is a little bit more complicated too. For some of us, we don't know that we're queer
Yeah.
or gay as we're going through puberty. We're
Yes.
still figuring that out.
Well, I knew.
I knew. I knew when I was
Since
like
I was
5.
since I was 3 years old, I knew exactly that I did not like girls.
Yeah, I mean, in your defense, a lot of 3-year-old boys don't like girls. They're icky and gross and all of that.
Right.
But so it's hard to say, right? That I'm the same. I didn't like girls kind of like gross and ew, but I think the majority of times, straight guys, as they go through puberty, start finding them affectionate
Yes.
and beautiful and interesting, and that never happened. Well, I take it back. They definitely became interesting to me, but more so like I wanted to be one of them and hang
Yes.
out with them than
I mean, let's be honest. The girls at that age, they're the coolest,
The
right?
coolest.
They have the best clothes. They have the best
Toys.
toys. They get to listen to the best music,
they watch the best movies,
the
TV
best movies.
shows.
They always hang out with each other. They don't play sports,
No dirty.
at least in my fantasy, right? They're going to the mall. They're hanging out together in group, and they're always having fun. They're having what is it called in English? They're having pajamas. No,
Oh, like a slumber party?
they're having slumber parties.
Yes.
I always wanted to go to a slumber party. Always wanted to be invited for a slumber party.
Did you ever spend the night with girls like before puberty, like when you were younger? Did your mom or because you have 2 sisters, so maybe girls spent the night at your house or you spent the night at the girl's house?
I had many girlfriends, girls that I was friends with, not girlfriends, but I had many girlfriends. And I remember this time, they never spent a night in my house, but I remember this time I went on a trip with friends. We went all to this theme park 8 hours from my hometown,
Oh.
and we rented a bus. I was staying in a hotel, and we were staying in a hotel near the theme park, kind of like Universal. And I became really close with this girl, and I was 15 back then.
Wow, so older.
Older, I was already,
Puberty's thriving.
yes, we hit it off very quickly. We
Mm-hmm.
became very good friends in that trip, and we decided to share the room for 2 nights. Well, it was fun. Nothing happened, obviously, because
You're gay.
nothing's gonna happen with, you know. But my mom, when she found out, and her mom, they got so mad because can you imagine a
Oh,
girl and a guy, 15 years old, in a
sure.
hotel room for 2 days?
Yeah, I was thinking more so like earlier. An example being when I was 6 or 7 years old. This is how I approached the situation. There were these two girls who were in my class, and I strategically realized they lived like a few streets away from me, maybe like a half a mile walk. So one Saturday I was like, Mom, can we go for a walk? I really just want to get out there. It's a beautiful day and it's something we can do together, knowing that they had planned to be outside that day. So we were going to walk by together. My mom would then get to meet them and then have my mom meet her family and their family, so we could have a strategic bond where I could start spending more time with them. And it's so funny because that it happened exactly according to my plan. We became best friends. I still know them
Oh,
to this day, but they're two twin girls, and I would always spend the night at their house. And I remember the first time I did, their dad kind of looked me up and down and was like scanning the threat level, right? Like, and they're like, no, this guy, he plays with the dolls more than the girls do. So yeah, so I would spend the night at their house all the time, like every other weekend. Sometimes they would stay at my house too, but I was connected more with girls and ended up spending the night with girls well into my
yeah.
teen years because, again, their parents would scan me and be like, "Not a threat. Come on in. You're welcome here." But yeah, it's interesting because the majority of the time when you go through puberty, guys can't be spend the night with girls,
No,
but
yeah.
when you're gay, you're not a threat.
No. You're part of the club.
You're part of the club. And it's funny too. I think about like how our interests start to change because I hung out with a lot of boys,
Yeah.
obviously as like a 5, 6, 7 year old. And we would use our imagination a lot. We'd be
Mm-hmm.
outside a lot. Sometimes I'd be the princess, sometimes I'd be the prince, but we would
No.
all like create these sort of like scenarios
Yeah.
playing. And then as you start to get closer to puberty, I think technology was also advancing, into the 90s, early 2000s. And so people were either going towards sports or video games, and I was still on the dolls. And so I think that's where I had like a separation and
Yeah.
a change in interests between the guys. Do you ever remember something like that yourself?
I remember when I was younger, I never liked to play sports. I never liked to play soccer, while all the other guys like to play soccer.
Right.
So there's already a separation between me and the other guys because I was not playing sports.
Right.
So I was always closer to the girls, and I was always playing with them,
Yeah, what they were doing.
playing house, playing restaurant, playing school. I always like to play those games because I
Yeah,
thought,
scenario.
yeah, exactly. So I remember I was always close to them growing up. And then as I got older, my puberty, I got even closer because even though I was not into girls, I didn't want to hang out with the boys because they were too
Yeah.
sporty. It's not for me.
Did you ever get concerned that they were gonna pick up on you being gay, especially at that
Yeah,
time as you're like really starting to flourish, puberty wise,
yeah,
hormone wise? That was my always my
yeah,
concern. People would be like, "Why do I always hang out with girls?" And I would think, well, if I hang out with the guys,
yeah,
then maybe a chance they might figure it
yeah,
out because there's 10 of them and one of
yeah,
me, and I obviously stand out. And then my biggest fear was if like I would in some way be staring too long or
yeah,
looking too long at a
yeah,
guy or start having a crush on one and then they pick up on
absolutely.
that. Not that I knew what the final result would be. They're not going to beat me up. None of my friends were ever like that, but it was more so like an internal fear.
Of being discovered. You don't want to be discovered. You don't want people to know that you
Right,
like boys too. You don't want people to find out about your sexuality because
right,
also you're not sure if you're actually gay. For a long time, at least for me, I told myself that I was just curious or
right.
maybe I was bi, but no.
Yeah, and then I was super in a religious household and started going to a private school when I was 13. And so at the same time, puberty, same time, getting sort of dumped and immersed in this conservative Southern, sometimes Baptist slash Methodist doctrine that was already telling us being gay was
Yeah,
wrong and would it wind us up in hell and,
yeah.
suffering for all eternity, which is enough to tell a 13-year-old to just keep things to yourself,
Yes.
And so for me, I just wanted to close it down and pray the gay way as fast as I could. But she spent lots of tears, prayers, and nights out trying to convert. But here I am, still
Here we
gay,
are. More gay than ever.
more gay than ever.
Couldn't be more gay.
True.
I remember right before my puberty, between age 10, 11, 12, 13, I was still hanging out with girls. I was still doing things that I thought maybe were considered girls' things to
Right.
do, games, not playing sports at all. And then it was not until I was 14 that people were starting to comment, why are you hanging out with
Mm.
girls only? Are you not into...
Boy stuff.
Which is funny, right? Because you think, why will people automatically assume that? Maybe I was into girls.
It's the outlier effect, right? Because the majority of the boys are that way and the majority of
Yeah,
the girls are that way, and you're the one who sticks out. Why? They want
right.
to know why, right?
Yeah,
Everyone needs to label us, needs to understand us before they even try to talk to us or get
yeah,
to know us. And so that's the problem is in general, we all fear what we don't know or don't understand, and it's a lot of effort to try to get to know someone or
yeah.
get to understand why they're different, and people just don't put the time and energy in. Also, people don't have the time, right? They will see you walking or see you, hanging out with a group of girls, and they're walking by, they're just automatically starting to pick up on
Yeah.
cues and create a whole image of who they think you are, and that is the problem. Stereotypes.
It's around that time too in school. Kids, they love to have those stereotypes in their heads
Hmm.
and make jokes about it and bully others.
Yep.
I guess this is something that is gonna happen
Yeah, I
because
mean, in those years, the meanest kind of funny
yeah,
is the most viral. We
yeah.
didn't have social media, but we had writing notes and secrets,
Yes.
and they spread just as fast as a
Yes.
viral Twitter tweet, or
Yeah.
whatever. What's interesting too is at that time of puberty, I started to realize that I was no longer living in this sort of self-reflective bubble where I just sort of focused on myself. I started to realize people were constantly watching me as well and
Mm,
constantly judging me. And before that, you kind of live in this la la land. You're like, it's all about me. This is my little bubble.
exactly.
And then you sort of enter this hormonal shift where you're like, wait, people are judging the way I look.
Yeah.
People are judging the
The
way
way
I
I
talk.
talk.
Yeah, the how I
Exactly.
present myself. And at that time, I also became hyper aware of the fact that certain things were different, right? Like, example, we talked about waking up with erections for the first time, like
Yes.
having engorged part of your body as you're waking up. You're like, what is this? Is this normal? Do I talk to someone about it? And I
Yes.
did not. I never mentioned it to my parents. I never said anything about sexual development. Even to this day, we've never had like
Wow.
a
I
birds
mean,
and
me
bees
neither.
talk.
Me neither. Do you remember the first time we jerk off?
So I don't remember like the first time, but I remember kind of like that time frame. And we used to have a pool and we had jets in the pool. And I remember one time like a jet like caressed like my genital area. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And that's kind of when I think my first thought of like when I started to realize that I could also control like what's going on down there. The problem is during those few first years of puberty, you can't control it very well. So I,
Yes.
I would end up having erections sometimes like at school or at church or like at a family function, and you're trying to learn how to like move it around so it's discreet.
Yes.
Has that ever happened to you before?
I don't remember that happening actually. I
It's good.
always heard that happening with other people, but I don't think that happened to me. I think I was always able to control
Yeah,
myself.
and that's totally normal. There's some people who, and it also could be a hormonal change too, right?
Yeah.
So surges in testosterone versus, a gradual increase can have a dramatic effect from kid to kid on how they're gonna express their hormonal surge. And so I remember vividly this one time, and I'll never forget it. I was at church, it was youth group. I was like 12 or 13, and there was all maybe 45 or 50 kids on stage, and they were doing some sort of presentation. And at this time too, I wasn't very aware that people would be looking at me. There's
Right.
45, 50 kids on stage, so I didn't think I was going to be any way the target of people's
Oh my
attention. But
God.
my parents were there, so of course they're looking at their kid. The whole time
No.
I'm like moving things around and like
No.
readjusting. And I remember getting off stage. It's like a trauma. My dad was like, "What is in?" We don't have the greatest of a relationship, but it's funny. My dad and my mom, even though divorced, went to the same church. Long story, but I got off stage. She's like, "What is wrong with you? You were doing this in front of the whole
So they didn't.
auditorium." And I'm like trying to like comprehend the whole entire auditorium being focused on me
Right.
and how like I need to now be aware 24/7 of how I present myself and what I'm doing, because when you're a kid, no one cares, right? You can be flipping things all around, but when you hit to that puberty age where you're starting to look like an adult and act like an adult and sound like an adult, those mistakes are not only traumatizing for you, but they last. Like maybe there's people in that auditorium who still remember. I don't know, probably not, but in my trauma brain, I still think of that moment like, oh my goodness, how foolish of me.
Did you ever notice you got a hard on?
So it wasn't exactly like a full-on hard on to my recollection. Of course, this was decades ago. I think it was more so like you can't be playing with yourself or moving things around there in public. And even at that moment, I remember being like, not understanding that this sort of area of my body was so
Yes.
sacred. Like I'm just trying to get comfortable, but that's the split, right? You have this shift of where you no longer are treated like a child. You're more of a sexualized
Yes.
object or person, or what you do is in that area is always going to be thought of as sexual,
Yeah,
which is
and
interesting.
a taboo is something that you don't talk to your parents, something that you don't want to
Yeah.
tell anyone.
Looking back, if I was the dad, I would probably said, "Hey, like I see you've discovered a new part of yourself. Let's talk about it."
Yes,
Like because the words you say to your kids,
they
especially
matter.
through puberty, as those hormones and motions and moods are changing, that's I think where the majority of our trauma comes from. It's
Yes.
like just trying to, especially gay, right?
Yes.
I already was self-conscious as I was, developing in that area, and then to kind of not even know further and be in such a traumatic situation. Again, still a trauma to this day.
Here we are talking about traumas from the past
We
and
are.
letting all go. This is
Speak,
important. It's part of it.
yeah, and speaking of traumas, another big one during puberty is skin
Oh
changes.
my God. To me, skin changes was definitely the worst part of my puberty because I had the worst acne that you can possibly imagine was on my face. I had pimples, multiple pimples every day. And I obviously would pop
Oh,
all the pimples that I would get,
me too.
and I got a lot of scars. So from ages 13 to 15 until 16, I had terrible skin. My face, it's funny because I didn't have any breakouts on my body, only my face. So for me to have those scars, and people sometimes they would comment on, sometimes they would joke about it. Obviously, as a kid, they think, oh, it's just a joke, it's just something silly, but they matter.
Yeah,
Like we're talking about traumas,
for
I was
sure.
traumatized. Sometimes I would go back from school and I'll feel so ashamed of my body, of why this is happening to me. I wish I didn't have any acne at all. So I
Yeah.
tried everything that I could. It was a nightmare for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely a big one that I think the majority of us experience at some point throughout puberty. When people see that you have breakouts on your skin,
Yeah.
again, these stereotypes that you're unclean, you don't take care
Yes.
of yourself, you don't eat healthy,
Yes.
all
They
of those things.
yes, they will ask me, "Are you washing your face?"
It's like, honey, if you only knew what I'm
Yes, I
washing my face
am.
with.
I'm scrubbing my face.
Yeah, and you don't know, right? Parents, at least in my situation, were not very knowledgeable or concerned about, hey, let's help you in that direction. Which again, I
Yeah.
think another great place for parents, or if I was a parent, to have a discussion, an educational session would be
Yeah.
about skincare because there's so much to understand. I still to this day have never been given a resource, reference, or recommendation by any of my family regarding skincare. It's something I had to learn on my own. But similarly, I didn't have like horrible acne that developed scarring. I had acne that would cause something known as post inflammatory hyperpigmentation. So
Mm,
after I would get a zit, of course, I would pop it too, and then
right.
it would stay like a hyperpigmented mark for it would
Wow.
almost look like a scar, but it was superficial. It would be
Mm-hmm.
brown or red for 6 to 12 months.
Yeah.
And so I would have one pimple maybe every couple weeks, but by 6 months,
You had all.
it looked like 45 were still healing.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so people would also say like, "Oh wow,
Yes.
you need to do this with your skin." And then I would go to Walgreens or CVS or Walmart and buy everything
Everything.
under $10 so I
Yeah.
could get multiple options, and I would just apply it all at the
Yeah.
same time, damaging
Me
my
too.
skin so badly. I also experienced something called keratosis pilaris. So it's a
Mm.
genetic condition that happens on the back of your arms, which typically presents during puberty. The keratin in the skin clogs the pore, and so it looks like acne, but it's not bacterial. So acne is mostly bacterial. And what it happens is it looks like 1,000 bumps on the back of your arms, and it
Wow.
can be anywhere. You can have keratosis pilaris on your face, your legs. I have it some on my legs as well. And I had no idea what it was. I applied everything I could. I remember those two girls I told you about earlier in the conversation. I would go to their house and spend the night, and they like to pop pimples, which is a thing.
Yeah.
People
Yeah.
enjoy it. I would lay on their bed, stomach flat on there, and like my arms like kind of
No.
exposed, and one would pop this arm, and the other would pop this
Oh
arm.
my God.
I had so many, and it would just be keratin. There's nothing like no pus or anything.
Uh-huh.
It's funny, this like white little plug would come out. And as you get older, your genetics are still the same, but your expression of them is different. So it goes away over time. I still have redness. I still have hyperpigmentation and a lot of freckles back here from it, but no longer getting the bumps, thank goodness. But yeah, and what's crazy is I actually went to the dermatologist for it, and they're
Yeah.
like, "Here's some cream that doesn't
Yeah.
work. There's no
Yeah.
no cure. Just wait it out." And when you're going through puberty, that's the last thing you want to do is wait it out.
And you don't have any answers. You want answers, you want solutions, you want
Yeah.
to be fixed, but you just have to wait. You have to have patience. And it's part of it. It's part of puberty. It's part of growing up. It's part of being gay too, because a lot of things you cannot talk to your parents because you don't want them to know
Yeah.
that you're gay.
Yeah. I wish there was like some sort of study guide or some sort of
Manual.
educational, or maybe there's like a safe word you can tell your PE teacher, like, I'm part of the club. Can you give me the sheet that explains like what gay sexual health is or gay puberty is like, so I don't feel crazy? But it is a different world. Hopefully there's more
Yes.
access to
Yes.
information now. Certainly I was not getting
Yeah.
on the internet at,
Yeah.
at 9, 10, 11,
Yeah.
12, 13.
Yeah. Back then, unfortunately, we didn't have access to internet. Not that internet is better
Right.
than, but there is more information now. Kids these days, they can at least Google, they can at least research, they can at least see other gay people, they can see other gay
Examples and other
Yep.
people living their life. Like an example for me is that I didn't have any mirror or any picture of another gay individual who
Yeah.
was successful and thriving. It took much later, I think, till I was probably in my teens before I would start being exposed to things like Will and Grace
Yes.
or other shows where the gay character had to be very straight presenting,
Yes.
very masculine, wore a suit, had to have education in order to thrive.
Yes.
Whereas our straight counterparts can get a job at AutoZone,
Yes.
have a family,
Anywhere,
and
yeah.
and it seems like they were doing fine. Everywhere I
Yeah.
went, I would see straight people living their lives. But to me, I thought if you're gay and you want to be successful and you want to be happy, you're going to have to do things 10 times harder,
Above and beyond.
make a name for yourself so
Yes.
that people
Will respect you.
will respect you.
Yeah, and if you are a little feminine, they would think you're a joke. They would think you are funny.
Just like the TV shows
Yeah.
and movies at the time. Now, obviously, things have progressed and we have so many more deep, thorough, and thought out characters
Yeah.
that are portrayed in media. But back then, if you were even slightly feminine, you were always the butt
Yeah.
of the joke. And all of us are, right? Straight, gay, whoever you are, there's a feminine part to your personality, and we either shove it down and don't let it express itself and suffer the consequences throughout life, or you kind of learn to live with it. And I feel like in the last 10 years, I'm really trying to learn to live with it and embrace that whole side of me. And I wish I knew that, years ago.
But everyone says that, but I think it's part of growing up. It's part of life. We never know all the answers at age 13.
Right.
We grow up, we go through those dark times, which, for some people are darker than for others. But did you enjoy your teenage years?
I think so. Looking back, I certainly wouldn't want to switch them now. However, I think I would have a lot more access to information.
Yes.
But I was also very rebellious, I think, because I had no access. So it's hard to say, right? I look back, I was super rebellious. I wish I kind of wasn't, but then at the same time, I had so much fun back then. I loved being able to grow up without the burden of posting and social
Yes.
media. However, I do love it now, and I love making relationships through social media. But at the time, it was nice to just be a kid.
Playing outside,
Yeah.
not coming home until it's 10 p.m.
It's exactly that. And I feel like, to be honest, some of the inner me, that inner child that I'm always trying to sort of heal and communicate with again and make happy again and enjoy, it is that kid who kind of I lost when I went through
Yes.
puberty. We ride bikes a lot now because it's one of my favorite things to do in
Yes.
years too. And I think back to like the perfect time in my life, and it was like probably 7 to like 12 where, we would meet in the cul-de-sac at the end of the afternoon and we'd all go for
Yes.
bike rides. We go feed the ducks by the
No
pond.
cares in the world.
It was a time and
Yeah.
no fears either. There
Yeah.
wasn't this bombardment of news telling us that your kids aren't safe. They need to be home by this time. There's murders on the loose and
Yes.
you can track the sexual predators in your neighborhood, which is all great. We need access to that
Absolutely.
information, but it also creates a lot of fear.
Yeah.
And it's crazy now. We go to the same neighborhoods I lived in and
Completely
there's no
different.
kids. There's no kids outside ever. That's all we did. I would get on my bike and go from street to
Yes.
street and see all these kids outside, and I didn't even know them. It
Play
was
with
like,
everybody.
yeah, little
Yeah.
microcosms of worlds, little kids, playing in our own little universe.
I feel like growing up in the 90s, 2000s, I feel we grew up in a bubble.
Yeah.
I grew up in Brazil and I had very similar experience too. I play outside with the kids in the neighborhood and I don't think that is happening this day
Yeah.
because there's social media, there's computers. Why would you play outside? It's not as safe as it used to be. It's not as fun as it used to be. And nobody's outside playing with other kids. Everybody's on their iPads, on their phones. So different times now.
Yeah, and definitely don't want to be back in my day. That's not
Well,
the.
I
But
guess we became those people.
yes, but there is so many positive things that have come from technology and the ability to entertain yourself with the phones and computers and stuff like that. I just wish that there was more of a balance that this generation got to experience. But here's the thing, the pendulum swings. One
Yes.
minute we love technology, one
Yes.
minute we don't. And so right now we're in this AI boom and all over the place with how tech is really, infiltrating our life, but that could change.
Who knows? One day you're gonna see us on maybe on a VHS. Gonna go back to tapes.
Yeah, those
No
will be
internet.
relations VHS. Oh, no. We'll do what everyone's doing, the records.
Right, they're back. You're gonna be able to see us from a VHS tape
Yeah.
and hear us from a record.
I don't know if that's a dream or a nightmare for some people, but whatever works.
Whatever works.
But puberty's different for everyone, and we could literally talk about this for another 5 hours, and I would have plenty to say.
We're
But
definitely gonna have to do part 2, part 3, part 4.
exactly.
Stick around.
But what was puberty like for you? Leave us some comments below. Did you see anything similar to what our experience was? Maybe it was different for you, but we love to hear what your life is like and how growing up in your puberty years sort of reflects to who you are today. This was a really fun topic. I really enjoyed it.
And maybe someone grew up in the 80s or in the 70s and they
Yeah.
have completely different experience. We
Exactly.
would love to hear it.
Absolutely. So thank you for joining us. If you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe,
Share, drop a pin,
Yeah.
comment.
all those things. If you have
Suggestions.
recommendations or suggestions, please leave them in the comments below. But we look forward to meeting you right here next week at the same time. Until then,
And thank you again for watching.
see you next time.
Bye.
Bye. It's so funny. I never had body odor through puberty. Ever. Didn't have to wear deodorant. No one ever said a thing. I never smelt a thing until I turned 20. I don't know why, but when I entered my 20s, the body odor came with me.
Really?
Yes, so deodorant is mandated now, but back then I could just free ball it.